The same things that we talked about on the campaign: education, healthcare, and jobs.
Tonight on Politics Now, Governor-elect Steve Sisolak sits down with us to talk about his priorities and his transition into the governor's mansion.
The best father a son or daughter could have.
Remembering a president and a patriot, the nation says goodbye to former President George H.W. Bush.
I've been thinking about running for the local level politics for a while now.
And Assemblywoman Olivia Diaz explains why she is stepping down just 1 month after winning re-election and running for city council instead.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now with Steve Sebelius and Patrick Walker.
Well, the nation and the world said their final goodbyes to President George H.W. Bush this week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Patrick Walker.
And I'm Steve Sebelius. All living former presidents and representatives from around the world honored the 41st President of the United States Wednesday at the National Cathedral. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Anna Warnicki, was there.
With full military honors, the flag-draped casket of President George H.W. Bush descended the steps of the Capitol one last time. A presidential motorcade made its way through the streets of Washington to the National Cathedral, where all living former presidents and President Trump were among the more than 3,000 who gathered to say one final goodbye to President George H.W. Bush. Dignitaries included Prince Charles, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, along with politicians from both sides of the aisle. They joined the Bush family at the service. Former President George W. Bush eulogized his father.
He valued character over pedigree, and he was no cynic. He looked for the good in each person, and he usually found it. A great and noble man. The best father a son or daughter could have. And in our grief, let us smile knowing that Dad is hugging Robin and holding Mom's hand again.
One last Washington motorcade. One final 21-gun salute. Then the presidential 747, renamed Special Air Mission 41, lifted off from Joint Base Andrews to fly the 41st president home. In Washington, I'm Anna Warnicki.
And President Bush was laid to rest on Thursday on the grounds of his presidential library next to his wife Barbara and their daughter Robin, who died in 1953 at age 3 from leukemia.
Well, Clark County Commissioners went to work this week on filling some empty seats in the legislature.
They approved nominees for 3 vacant legislative seats, but one of them creates another vacancy that the board will have to deal with before the legislature convenes in February. Clark County Commissioners have made their decision as to who should fill 3 legislative vacancies. State Senate Majority Leader Aaron Ford is vacating his seat because he is Nevada's Attorney General-elect. Out of 10 applicants, commissioners selected PUC attorney Dallas Harris to fill the outgoing Democrat seat.
Once the seat opened up, I felt that this was the best opportunity for me to give back to the community that has given so much to me.
State Senator Dick Sagerblum, also a Democrat, will be vacating his seat because he won a spot on the county commission. 9 people applied for that seat. After commissioners voted, current Assemblyman Chris Brooks trades his title.
I look forward to representing even more neighbors in Senate District 3. Senate District 3 is where 5 generations of my family have lived, and it's my favorite part of the great state of Nevada.
However, with Brooks's appointment, a new vacancy is created, and commissioners will have to name his replacement in the Assembly with another Democrat sometime before the legislature convenes in early February. And also this week, a replacement was picked for the Assembly seat that Dennis Hoff won after he died. Clark County, Lincoln County, and Nye County all nominating Greg Hafen II. Now, a timeline has not yet been set to choose Chris Brooks' replacement in the Assembly, but the Clark County Commission will have to take that one up as well.
And there's yet another Assembly vacancy after Democrat Olivia Diaz announced she is going to step down just a month after the election. Diaz says she plans to run for a seat on the Las Vegas City Council. That's the same seat that soon-to-be former Congressman Ruben Kuhn is considering, according to his associates. Current Councilman Bob Coffin announced he won't be seeking a 3rd term. Diaz has been in the legislature since 2010 and won re-election this year with 81% of the vote. But she says she's interested in the city council job to fix infrastructure and address homelessness, not as a foil for Kewen.
Not at all. I've been thinking about running for the local level politics for a while now. I've been talking about how our communities should be represented by people who live there, who look like them, who know their problems and drive their streets and shop at their neighborhood supermarkets.
Filing for the city council starts on January 22nd. In addition to Diaz and possibly Kewen, former Las Vegas Parks Commissioner David Lopez, Department of Veterans Affairs Project Manager Melissa Clary, and newcomer Sean Mooneyham have declared their interest in this seat as well.
And I do want to make a quick correction. I believe the county commissioners will take up both of those vacancies as soon as they're meeting on the 18th.
Yep.
I think at the time I wasn't sure if they were going to be meeting or not before Christmas, so I just wanted to make that. But speaking of which, back to the topic here, does this end Kewen chances, do you think, his chances for this seat?
Well, you know, Kewen could still be a formidable foe. I mean, according to the FEC records, he has more than $330,000 in his federal campaign account. Diaz has just $15,000 in her assembly campaign account. But it's going to be a low turnout municipal election, and door-to-door campaigning can be as important as what you can buy with money, lawn signs, billboards, and direct mail.
Well, a new governor is set to be sworn in on January 7th up in Carson City, and so far the transition from Republican Governor Brian Sandoval to Democratic Governor-elect Steve Sisolak has gone smoothly.
Patrick and I sat down with Sisolak this week to talk about his plans for the office. Take a look. If you had to say your top 3 priorities going in for your first term, and especially your first legislature, what would those 3 things be?
Well, the 3 priorities, once we get in office, we've got a way to go before we get there. Obviously, assembling a transition team, which we've done, and then hiring some of our initial people. The same things that we talked about on the campaign: education, healthcare, and jobs. Those are the 3 issues that I'm going to put my primary focus on, getting started, and hopefully we'll make some progress on those quickly and move on to some other things.
Is the first Southern Nevada governor since Kenny Gwinn. On election night, you talked about one Nevada and really unifying North versus South, dispelling that notion. Governor Sandoval has sometimes been called the governor of Reno. What are you going to do to ensure that you're not picking up the nickname of governor of Las Vegas?
Yeah, it's extremely important to me after coming through a brutal election, both the primary and the general. I had tough elections both ways, and people didn't think we'd make it through the primary, then we didn't think we'd make it through the general, and here we are. But I'm really strong on the One Nevada theme. I mean, I'm tired of the Republican, Democrat, North-South, men, women, black, white. I mean, I got to put that aside. I mean, we need to be one Nevada. If we need to move this state forward and realize our full potential, we need to come together. And unfortunately, that's not a popular thing to do in politics right now, but it's my intent to do that and to focus on that. And I've told everybody along the way, whether they supported me or not, I hope I can earn your vote next time I ask for a vote, but we're going to be together. And if you're interested in what's best for the citizens of the state of Nevada, we're going to be fine. If you want to make this about partisanship or regionalism or gender or ethnicity or religion or anything else, I'm not going to be with you.
There are some acute needs down here, and one of those is the Clark County School District. We know what's in the budget so far for education. We know there's expanded funding for the school safety programs and also in the enhanced funding formula. What else needs to be done to help the school district?
Well, there's several things that we need to do, and we talked about the expansion. You talked about expansion as it relates to security with the schools, but a lot of that's going into counselors and that sort of thing, and I don't know if that's going to harden the targets, as it were, when you deal with law enforcement. I think a couple things we need to do with the school system. We need a lot more transparency than we've had in the past. That has not existed. I don't think there's been enough cooperation. It's an extremely large school district. I think that the connection between the school district and the parents on this side is non-existent. I dealt with this at the county commission and I know that maybe they're going to listen a little bit more now to me than they did 6 months ago. But when, you know, the tracks and the basketball courts are closed so kids can't go play after school, I've got a problem with that. That's paid for by taxpayer money, and it's hard to go back to the taxpayer and say, look, we need your support, we need your funding for additional schools when the citizens and the neighbors can't use the facilities. So that's going to be fixed. And we're going to have some transparency. And the governor put a great deal of money into the school districts, into the education system, the DSA formula, which needs to be updated, the formula, but it's not getting down into the classrooms. I mean, there's not a line item for children with special needs, including autism. If you're on the autism spectrum, there's not a line item for that, or English second language. That didn't exist 50 years ago when this formula was established, so we need to start addressing some of those special needs in any new funding.
Well, Steve Sisolak has said that Governor Brian Sandoval has been great in this transition period that's been going on. The two of them seem to be really on the same page, much to the chagrin maybe of the farther right members of the Republican Party and farther left members of the Democratic Party.
Well, yeah, I mean, these two guys are very close ideologically, more so than many people think. I mean, Sisolak's a conservative Democrat, Sandoval is a moderate Republican, so it totally makes sense that their plans would be very close together.
Well, still ahead, solving Nevada's water woes.
Water has been over-allocated in the basin. If you've got 100 acre-feet, you can't allocate 150 acre-feet.
Up next, Governor-elect Sisolak tells us why he wants to change how water is allocated in Nevada and the solutions he wants to pursue instead of the Water Authority's pipe.
$1,000 on your mortgage with One Nevada.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
Well, climate change has put a lot of stress on the Colorado River. It's Nevada's main water source and one we share with 6 other states.
So how do we solve that problem, and what does Governor-elect Steve Sisolak think of the Southern Nevada Water Authority's plans for a pipeline to grab rural water in eastern Nevada? Well, we asked him. Another critical issue in the state is water, and one of the key elements of that water issue is that pipeline to the eastern part of Nevada. Now, you've supported it in the past, but you more recently have come out and said no, you're against that. Tell me where you're at on that issue now, and do you think there's any alternatives to that pipeline that can help with the water issues that we're facing?
I do think there's alternatives to the pipeline. I'm not in support of the pipeline taking water from one end to another. I did vote to appeal the ruling because we've got a problem with the engineer. Water has been over-allocated in the basin. If you've got 100 acre-feet, you can't allocate 150 acre-feet, and that's what we've done over time. That needs to be done legislatively. I don't want that done by one engineer or one judge making a decision, so I think it's important to get the lawsuit going and come up with a policy. Water, I've had this discussion for my 10 years on the county commission. I've served on all the water district, water authority, Colorado River Commission, those sort of things. I think we've kind of lost our way. We should have invested much more in desalinization than we did. We have one plant we're part owners of in Mexico that is doing well, but if we'd have put a lot more money into that, I think we'd have a better plan. The Water Authority and the Water District have done a tremendous job in terms of turf remediation, getting it off there. All our water is recycled. It's because of return flow credits that we have an adequate supply of water. We'll have an adequate supply into the future. We've got hundreds of thousands of acre-feet banked in other states that we can use in case of a furtherance of the drought, but hopefully with global climate warming, which is real. There'll be a cyclical change here, and we'll get more moisture, you know, in the snowpacks and start to fill the lakes back up. I mean, I've been here a long time. I remember when the water was coming over the top, and we had to open up the flumes. It's been in my lifetime, so it's not an eternity that, you know, this definitely could happen again. But I think we need to invest more in technology. Other countries use desalinization totally. Our ships that we put out at sea use desalinization. I think there's a way we can invest in research and change. And people say, well, what are you going to do, pipe the water back up here? Well, the intent was never to pipe the water up here. It's to trade for the water that's coming out of the Colorado River.
One last question. Well, since you've been governor-elect, what's the biggest thing that surprised you so far?
That my fiancée said yes when I asked to get married.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's the biggest thing. Why she would want to get into this with me is beyond me. But that's the best thing that's happened to me since then as well. I don't think anything surprised me. I mean, it's extremely detailed. I've been to 2 governor training groups now, one down in Colorado Springs and one in New Orleans this past weekend. And the impact of the National Guard was one of the big things that I spent quite a bit of time on, because it's not something that I really analyzed during the campaign, of the control of the National Guard and what you need to be aware of and be briefed on. And it's a big job. It's a big, big job, and I've surrounded myself with what I feel are really, really good people and have given me good advice, and I'm not going to get rushed in any decisions. We're going to be methodical and prudent and thoughtful as we move through that, and I really have high hopes for the state of Nevada moving forward. I think that we've got an opportunity to fix some things and improve on some things that Governor Sandoval initiated, and I'm honored that and humbled that the voters have chosen me to get there, and if I didn't earn their vote, I'll hopefully earn their vote next time. But we're going to move forward, and we're going to do the best we possibly can for the citizens of the state of Nevada.
And Sisolak also pitched the idea of a cannabis control commission that would function like the Gaming Control Board in order to try to get some consistency in our rules about marijuana across jurisdictions. You can watch me explain how that would work in the rest of our interview on LasVegasNow.com.
Well, should McCarran Airport get a new name?
We definitely need to rename it.
I think a lot of people in this state would really be upset.
Our face-off panel debates if it needs changing and if Harry Reid should be in consideration for the new name. That's next on Politics.
On 8 News Now.
Well, Clark County Commission Chairman and Governor-elect Steve Sisolak has floated the idea of renaming McCarran International Airport after Harry Reid. The idea has drawn support and criticism, so we asked our face-off panel to weigh in. Here's KXNT radio host Alan Stock from the right and Battleborn Progress Deputy Director Maria Teresa Lieberman from the left. Let's talk about this proposal to rename the airport, McCarran International Airport, rename it either for Harry Reid, that's what Governor-elect Steve Sisolak wants to do, or something else like Las Vegas International or whatever. Is it a good idea or a bad idea? What do you think, Alan?
You know, it's been known as McCarran for many, 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 many years, and I understand that the concern some people have because of certain things that McCarran may have said. Not all of it's documented. Some of it was hearsay. So I did try to look it up to find out exactly what he said and wasn't able to find a lot of direct quotes. But if the case is that they're concerned about what he said back then, and it may have had a racist or anti-Semitic tinge to it, I mean, there were certain racist tinges that came out of Harry Reid's mouth at various times. Certainly about talking about Barack Obama being the light-skinned Negro that could affect a Negro dialect when he wanted to, or a white dialect when he wanted to. I mean, you know, things that he said that he later went, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. So, I mean, you know, there were issues that came out of his mouth, too. I don't think it should be named Reid Airport. If they're going to name it, rename it anything at all, I mean, where do people come here? Do they come to McCarran, or do they come to Reid, or do they come to Las Vegas? If you want to rename it to Las Vegas International Airport. People would get that. I would our letters are still LAS, our call letters LAS. So, I mean, that's what's going on. So if it's really a big issue, change it to Las Vegas International Airport, and don't go on a partisan basis.
Maria, what do you think? It seems like Steve Sisolak was doing this because Harry Reid's been ill, and this was sort of an homage to a guy who has helped him in his own career and helped a lot of Democrats in their careers. But it got a huge reaction. There's a lot of people who think this is a terrible idea. What do you think?
I think that we definitely need to rename it. To what or into whose name? I think time will tell what that ends up being, but we definitely need to rename it because McCarran was a terrible human being that said terrible things, and so definitely rename it. I wouldn't mind Las Vegas, like you said, since that's where people come to. But also I can understand why people want Harry Reid or Reid International Airport. Because at the end of the day, no matter what side you're on, he ended up doing a lot for Nevada and really rose up in the ranks in Congress and the Senate and did a lot for Nevada and kind of put us on the map. So that's why I see that. But honestly, at the end of the day, as long as we take McCarran out of it, I think a lot of people will be fine.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in this state would really be upset, if not more than half the state. So, I mean, if they're going to consider the idea of Reid, then take a vote of the people, or some kind of a poll, and find out what people really want. I can't believe that the majority of people would want Reid Airport.
People don't want his name on the airport that people from all over the world fly to when he has said terrible things that may hurt a lot of those people. So might as well just get it out of there. And I agree, if it's like LAX, Las Vegas International, it's a welcoming name, we're a welcoming town.
You can also watch Alan and Maria debate the legislative appointments we told you about earlier in the show and what the deaths of people such as George H.W. Bush means for polarization in the country. That's all on LasVegasNow.com. Click on Political News under the News tab. Patrick?
All right, Steve, in our news segment, Eye on Carson Ceti would tell you how the state is getting ready for the 2019 legislative session. A state panel on the justice system wants to reduce criminal penalties for possession of small amounts of illegal narcotics. The panel wants state lawmakers to change felony offenses to misdemeanors for small amounts of drugs like heroin, meth, and cocaine. They say it's a waste of taxpayer money to house addicts. They will make a formal recommendation to the legislature on December 19th. Committee assignments have been picked for the state Senate during the 2019 legislative session. Some of the key ones: Mo Dennis will chair the Education Committee, Pat Spearman will head Commerce and Labor, and Joyce Woodhouse will chair the Finance Committee. Well, the state's Economic Forum members approved the official revenue projections for the cornerstone for the next 6 months of budget negotiations.
We will see continued growth. It will be softer, maybe slower, as we see our current economic expansion to mature.
Budget analysts predict the state will collect $8.84 billion in tax revenue over the next 2 years. That's $591 million more than the current 2-year cycle. Sales and gaming taxes are expected to increase as more people come to the Silver State as residents or as visitors, which is at record levels as of the latest monthly McCarran passenger numbers. However, forecasters figured in an anticipated slowdown. They figured that into the second year of the biennium, which is fiscal 2021. We'll be right back.
Bernstein.com.
What to watch, where we tell you about what we are keeping an eye on next week. The deadline to sign up for health insurance through the Affordable Care Act in Nevada is next week. That's December 15th. You can go online and walk yourself through or find some places that offer help for free. We have links on our website, LasVegasNow.com. You can search for Vanessa Murphy's story on it. At this point, Steve, like a quarter of the people who signed up last year have signed up so far this year.
Yeah, and it's probably not surprising, too, because when all the talk in Washington about the repeals and what they're taking out of the law, what they're putting back, you know, the individual penalty being out, it's very confusing, I think, for people. Although, interestingly enough, I saw a Gallup poll this week that talked about Americans being satisfied with their health care, notwithstanding the costs and sometimes cumbersome process of going through it. Well, that's our show. Thanks very much for watching Politics Now.
We'll see you next week.